1, 2, 3, 4. I got thoughts running through my head. I got thoughts, can't you see? I got thoughts, the books I read. I got thoughts, won't you listen to me?
Hello and welcome back to The Author Has Thoughts. I'm the author in question, Gary Ballard. I have been doing a series of my Various and Sundry videos. In this case, I'm talking about something very topical, the 2020 pandemic, coronavirus, COVID, whatever. So without further ado, let's continue the video. That brings me to my next stage of motherfucking the government and discussing the federal response is the testing part. So here's the thing about federalized government, about the federal level of government. It has tremendous resources, and in the United States especially, it can do things that state governments cannot do financially, i.e., it can sell bonds, treasury bonds. It can generate debt to basically create money from nothing. Now, granted, eventually that money has to be paid back. That's what debt is. And, we've been deficit spending and debt spending for a long time. And there's certainly an argument to be made that there can and should be a limit to deficit and debt spending by a government, because you clearly can go overboard with that. You can do too much deficit spending. I'm all for that. And I'm certainly not a proponent of spending willy-nilly with no clear purpose in mind by a government. The spending needs to be efficient, and it needs to be documentable, and it needs to be accountable, and it needs to be effective. So just spending is not the answer. However, state governments, many of them, and maybe all of them, are not allowed to go into debt. Or they are, but they're already strapped anyway, because state revenues are, varied in this and that, and there's varying levels of state income tax. Some states don't have income tax, so they have to rely on sales tax. The funding levels for things like public health vary wildly between states. Some states are poorer than others. Hell, I'm in one of the most poor states imaginable, with an economy that is, barely above subsistence level in some places. So relying on state governments to be able to ramp up public health testing at a level that it needs to be in order to track and control the spread of the virus, and then on top of that, build a completely from scratch apparatus for contact tracing. States can't do that. Even the largest state economies, places like California and New York, are going to struggle to do that because again, they got a ton of fucking people, and they got a lot of social services they have to fund. And so relying on states for that sort of extremely important component of public health in a pandemic is doomed to failure. Just absolutely doomed to failure. States can't handle that. It's the reason that we do things like hurricane funding through FEMA and through the government, because states that get hit by a hurricane or floods or tornadoes or wildfires, those aren't normal things that you can always budget for. Certainly you can put aside some money, and I'm sure all these states do. The ones that have this, they do, but they can't. They literally cannot be expected to foot that entire bill, and that's why we live in a federal United States, is so that we can all get together to share the burden of things that go wrong for one state when they can't handle it. So if fucking Wyoming burns down to the ground, Mississippi will contribute a little bit to helping them get back on their feet. Just like if Alabama gets devastated by a hurricane, Connecticut can pitch in a little bit to help Alabama get back on its feet. That's a social contract. That is that is what we expect. That's what we should expect from a federal government, is to take the burden that the individual states cannot bear. That's what it's there for. Otherwise, what the fuck do we even have one for? Just have 50 states just fiddle farting around doing whatever they want. We had that. It's called a confederacy, and it lasted 5 years, and fuck them. They're gone. Ash heap of history. We decided back during the original constitutional, constitutional committee, whatever it's called, convention, constitutional convention. We decided we didn't want a confederacy, we wanted a United States. So let's have that and let's use it. We all pay federal taxes, and we bitch about it to varying degrees, but that's what the federal money exists for. That's what the federal government exists for. To provide a unified approach to problems that are bigger than individuals can handle. That's the whole goddamn point of collective action. Collectivism. I know that's a bad word for people who still know what socialism and Marxism and communism and all that means. But that's the theory of collectivism, is that the sum of the parts is greater than the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. We can do more together than we can do separately. And that goes to the problem with the Trump administration specifically, but also many of the Republican administrations at the state level and various levels, and the party's platform itself, all the way down the chain. I'm all for the rights of the individual. I am very much an individualist. However, one individual cannot do the same thing that 100 can, or 1,000, or 1,000,000, or 327 million, or give or take a few. It just can't. And that's okay. The common goal of the United States should be life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? Well, again, you can't do any of those things if you have a, coronavirus spreading like wildfire. You just can't. On an individual level or on a government level. You just can't. So there has to be a unified federal response, and there hasn't been. The only unified federal response has been, don't make Trump angry. Don't make him look bad, because it might hurt his re-election chances. Don't let the stock market crash, because it might hurt his election chances. So he pumps $3 trillion within a couple of days to try to keep the stock market from going like below 17,000, whatever that number means. And so now, despite the fact that the economy is in shambles, we got, like 20% unemployment, and people are dying at a rate of 1,000 a day, the stock market is just fucking booming. Which means there are people making money, and a lot of money, while you got people that are about to get thrown out of their house because they don't have a job and they don't have, their unemployment ran out, the unemployment bonus ran out. The stock market is completely, just absolutely decoupled completely from reality. It is literally just big pools of money trading money back and forth. That's all that's happening. And it has nothing to do with an actual economy. But that has been Trump's measure for a good economy. And when it went down, oh my God, it looked bad on him. And of course, we can't make him look bad. Because the biggest problem Trump has as a leader is conflating his success with the success of the United States itself. I don't care about his success. I don't care about his little feelings. I don't care if his ego is so fragile that he can't take criticism. Don't give a fuck. What I care about is whether or not people are dying in the streets. And they're getting close. You have to have a collective federal response. And it has to be regardless of whether or not it makes the big man look bad. You know what? If he fucked up, let him take the blame. Let him eat the shit sandwich that says I fucked up. But he won't do that. He accepts no blame, no responsibility for anything. And when he does act, it's generally to make things worse. For instance, case reporting. About a month ago, the White House decreed that all testing numbers, rather than what they have been doing, which is going to the CDC, all the testing and the numbers about COVID deaths and all that, rather than going to the CDC, and again, there's no reason they shouldn't go to the CDC first, and the CDC should be reporting those publicly. They went to a private firm, which, by the way, has some ties to Jared Kushner, with some friends of Kushner's or something like that. So imagine that. Through a company, I believe, called Palantir, which, look them up, part of the whole data operation during the 2016 campaign. So those numbers are now being vetted by a private firm that has a contract that the actual awarding of the contract is kind of shrouded in secrecy and not being transparent about where it came from and how it got there, and being a no bid contract, even though they say there was a bid process, but nobody who would have bid on it actually says they bid on it or got the opportunity to bid on it. So the testing numbers that we see now are horrible. But the worst part is, I don't think they're accurate. I think they're lowballed, as low as they can get. Because we already know that both testing and death numbers are underreported. We're pretty sure that that's the case, either through incompetence, negligence, intentionally, or through just misdiagnosis. I'll give you some examples. 2 examples of how testing is fucked up. A few weeks back, my wife woke up with a fever. And my wife is immunocompromised. So she has to watch this shit, like, completely. She's been working from home since the get-go, since the first shutdown. And will continue to do so. So she had a fever. So I immediately was like, I was supposed to go into the office that day. I was like, nope, can't do that. Quarantine. She calls up to try to get testing. She has, and it wasn't a high fever, but it was a fever. It was enough to be concerned about, especially given the circumstances. Not to mention the fact that if she's got it, I've probably got it, which means I can't go into my office and potentially spread it to other people there, or anywhere else for that matter. And so she calls up. You can't get a test, or at least you couldn't get a test through the doctor, without having a 72 hours of sustained fever, and that's it. So you have to show symptoms for 3 days, at least in this manner. Now, I assume unless you want to actually go out and pay for it yourself, out of pocket, which I probably could have done, but didn't. It's like, okay, let's just back it up for a second. We can work from home. We don't have to, go run out immediately. But a lot of people certainly couldn't. People who don't have health care because they lost their job at the beginning of this, sure as fuck couldn't. So 3 days. And then if she still ran a fever, then she could get a schedule for a test. Which again, if you're not checking your temperature every day to see if you even have the symptoms, you could be 2-3 days without knowing you had it, spreading it around. Another buddy of mine online, who I believe lives in Kansas, but I couldn't tell you for sure, honestly, he was an online friend, who has diminished lung capacity, is very much, susceptible to this sort of thing as one of the vulnerable population, was running just terrible fever. Finally, after like 3 days, I think he got a test. The test results weren't going to come back for 14 days. 14 days now. Now think about that. If you paid any attention to the way the virus works, 14 days you could be either over it or dead, at which point test doesn't really do much good. Now granted, this is anecdotal, but if that's happening in 2 different states, the testing lagging so badly and not being able to get a test even though you might have it. I actually had a sister-in-law that was in the hospital with literal symptoms that were just textbook COVID, who never got a test. She recovered, never got a test. I think now she's getting a test. This was back in like April. 3 instances in 3 separate states of testing being widely unavailable and or unhelpful because there isn't a federal response. And so each state has had to kind of piecemeal its testing capability with what money it could find. And I'm going to go with one more final point, is the economic impacts. Shutdowns are economically devastating. Absolutely, without a doubt. Our economy is based on just-in-time stock. So stores that sell things aren't stocking things that they don't sell. They aren't stocking things they don't need, except in very small quantities. Generally speaking, they're within a day or two of selling out of everything and expecting that they will get stock within that day or two before they sell out. That's how it works. It's very efficient. It does a great job of not only keeping our economy moving, keeping consumer goods out there and available, but making the companies that sell those goods more money by cutting down on waste. Very efficient system. It does not, however, work when shit just goes sideways like it has. So you can't just flip that off, just turn that switch off and expect that the economy can just turn back on and there be no effects from it. The minute we had to do a lockdown, our economy was fucked. Fucked. And the thing that I believe of the current administration and the Republican Party, especially when you're talking about Mitch McConnell and the Senate, the thing they either will not recognize or acknowledge or do anything about is the fact that the economy's fucked no matter what we do. We could open every single business up tomorrow and then there not be another single case reported ever, or death. And even if tomorrow this all went away, our economy is still probably headed into a depression, or at the very least a worse recession than we had in 2008. It's just inevitable. You can't shut off an economy like this and turn it right back on without consequences, without there being significant consequences. So any argument to be made for opening up the economy, sending children back to school, doing anything that is going to significantly impact the number of new cases in the name of the economy, doing any of those risky things just because we have to fix the economy, we have to open the economy back up, or the economy is dead, you're wasting your time. because the economy is fucked either way. It just is. You can't have 20% of the working population go, get on unemployment, be unemployed for months on end without that having some effect. You're going to have effect on supply and demand. You're going to have the effect that we've had recently, which is the supply chain starts breaking down. We've had the meat and chicken and all that prices almost double because they can't get enough to us, which apparently it was because a lot of the meat packers wanted to sell their stuff to China. Maybe. Capitalism, yay. But you can't do all those things without having an effect. And it's going to be a seriously bad effect. It's going to affect a lot of people. And it's the best you can hope for is likely that you keep it from hurting too many people and killing too many businesses or industries. But the simple truth of the matter is there are some industries that will not survive in any way like we see them now. They just can't. I love going to restaurants and movies. I'm not a bar guy. I like doing my drinking at home. But restaurants and movies, that's my jam. I'm a foodie. I love going to movies. I will not go to a movie in a theater, go to eat in a restaurant, go to a sporting event, go to a concert. Sure as hell won't be going to church, but I wouldn't have gone there anyway. It's beside the point. And I will not go to the gym. Those are places I just will not go until this thing is under control, until we have some kind of vaccine and or treatment. It's just not worth it. Now, like I said, I love going to see movies. I love going and eating in restaurants. I love it. But I can't do it. Those places are just vectors for disease control, for disease spread. Gyms, same way. I don't care how much you social distance. Even putting the people in the plastic hamster cages that I've seen some of these gyms try to do. No. And the temerity of some of the theater chains I've seen who are opening up again and daring to not enforce a mask policy, to not force people to wear masks. You're not going to see me. I mean, you may see some other people, but you're not going to see me. I'm not giving you my money for that. Sorry. I've already been in enough places this year where people say that they're wearing masks and I don't see one goddamn mask anywhere. I'm not doing it. And I hate that because the restaurant industry is fucked. I mean, restaurant margins in the best of times are paper thin. Just silly paper thin. And, a lot of restaurants go under just because they can't make money because it's a tough business. Live musicians and bars, again, it's tough business. But I'm not going to go, I'm not going to go expose myself to that kind of risk. I can't. I'm not going to do it. Cruise ships, which were already a teeming pile of norovirus and other communicable diseases. I could care less if the cruise industry dies. Sorry, I can't. Most of the cruise lines that I know of are they flag themselves and they put their business, they base their business in non-American countries to get around worker protections and tax laws and all that, so they can go get fucked for all I care. I just don't care. I wouldn't have been going on a cruise anyway. again, gyms, I hate it, but I'm not going to a gym. I mean, I wasn't going to a gym much enough anyway, but I'm just saying, I'm not going to one while this is going on. All of those industries are going to have some serious trouble. Here's a little test. Let's see how this goes. I get no kick from champagne.